Vital Signs. This is the Mission and Goals podcast. Radio check, over. Hang in there, buddy. We've got you. You're not alone. G'day, John. How are you?
Hey, Joel. I'm going really good.
Hey, thanks for being here. Finally got to get it going.
Yeah, no worries at all.
But I think this is going to be a really good episode, so I'm happy for the wait. Without going too much into it, do you want to tell the people, well, without me going too much into it, do you want to tell the people who you are and then what you're doing at Oasis and what Oasis is?
Yeah, sure. I retired about 8 years ago as an army officer. I'd spent quite a bit of my time in Townsville in my career. I think I spent out of my 36 years in the army, I spent 12 here in Townsville. So for me, and Townsville, I wouldn't have moved here when I started here in Townsville 40 years ago, but when I came back for my third time, I realised that Townsville's changed significantly, and it was really good. And it was the place to come back to. And a lot of my friends were here too. So a lot of my friends who'd served with me in the army all settled in Townsville as well. So it was a bit of a no-brainer for me, apart from the fact my wife's a Townsville girl as well. And then I got my parents in here, so we got out here in Townsville. I can't believe it's it's over 8 years since I've been here. But I fairly quickly got into the veteran community, mainly because of all those friends I had here. So it was a bit sad actually, because I had quite a few of my friends and people who had served with me had taken their own lives or were. And in fact, at one point there, I had a reunion for the 1 hour mob at the Australian Hotel, and we were at a wake for someone who'd taken their own life, and it was just everyone was just realising that there's something going wrong here. Mm-hmm. So I did start to get involved in the veteran community. So I'm doing a lot of things for a lot of people, most of which is connected into veterans.
Which is Oasis. So I just want to touch back on your military service. So you said you're an army officer. Were you with 1 RAR?
Yeah, absolutely. I commanded 1 RAR in East Timor in 2000. End of 2001, so we for 6 months on the East Timorese border. I also served with 1 RAR in Somalia as the operations officer, and I was a lieutenant in Somalia. So unlike lieutenant in 1 RAR, so unlike most of my peers who served in multiple battalions, I only served in one infantry battalion my whole career.
Yeah, right. And how did you find the infantry battalion and the mentality from you joined in the 80s through to when you discharged not long ago? What was what's defence, army, even infantry down to that level, the mentality behind the guys, how much did that change over the years?
Oh, I became more and more professional as we went. You know, we started off, it was a bit, particularly here in Townsville. Townsville was a very big army presence for a fairly small town. So it wasn't a particularly nice place to be, or comfortable for us socially. The place was brown because there was no rain, and it was
Brownsville.
It was Brownsville, that's right. So we it was pretty rough and tough. But as time went on, and when I came back, I came back as a brigade commander in 2007-8. Well, I had soldiers who had PhDs. We had soldiers many soldiers who had girlfriends at James Cook University. Mm-hmm. We had a completely different. All of the visiting generals we had come and visit Townsville. Whenever you put them on, put soldiers on display to explain what they did, the generals were all so amazed that our soldiers could talk for themselves in front of generals. No other army does that. They'll put some. At least a senior NCO or an officer in charge. Yeah. We've got, we'd have a infantry section lined up. Yeah. The section commander introduced himself and then introduced the general to the rest of the section. Yeah. And each member of the section would talk about what they do. They just couldn't believe it. So, I think professionally the army just got stronger and stronger.
Yeah, cool. The reason I ask is, do you notice a difference in between veteran mental health from members you served with in, say, the 80s and 90s compared to are the challenges the same from now as from the soldiers back in the 80s and 90s? Your friends and your peer group, are they dealing with the same challenges that our veterans today are facing?
Yeah, I think a lot of the challenges are the same. It's just a matter of that we're now aware of what some of those problems are. Mm-hmm. We probably didn't identify the problems early on. Now we're seeing there is a problem, and people are more willing to come up and ask for help, and therefore we know about it. And the Oasis here is a classic example. There's no shame. We talk about it amongst ourselves. There's no shame in saying, you're having a few mental health problems, or you're not feeling well, and it's all in your head and you don't know what's going on. They're much more keen to talk about it these days than I think they were 30, 40 years ago.
It's amazing. I think just the talking about it, this podcast, like things like this, is hugely supportive, because even in the veteran support group that I sort of run at the moment, people are alone, and they think they're alone, and they're the only ones going through those problems.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where they're not. Like almost every veteran is like, not almost, but like a quick fact I've found out is almost half of veterans within 12 months of discharging end up with a mental illness diagnosis. Which is crazy. The so Oasis.
Right, so
Oasis was born out of Operation Compass. So before we get to Oasis, I want to talk about Operation Compass, because that's the basis of Oasis, the beginnings of it.
Yeah, absolutely. So in fact, that all started once I started to get involved with all my friends here in Townsville. There was an incident. We had I think it was August 16. There was a national newspaper story that came out on every front page, which basically said more soldiers had taken their own life in the first 8 months of that year than had died on combat operations in Afghanistan. So, and at the same time, the government announced a national suicide prevention trial for veterans and their families. And I was getting asked quite a lot, and I was interested in myself as what could I do? And we went through that phase of 22 for 22, and everyone was trying to think of what can we do to raise the awareness of the problem. And here was a golden opportunity to actually find out and they wanted to run this trial in Townsville. So here was an opportunity to get all of us together as a group and say, what do we think are some good ideas that would work in the veteran community, which was literally what we did. I put my hand up and said I'd chair the trial. I created a board which had everyone from the Assistant Commissioner for Townsville on it, for Northern Queensland on it, had fireys, police, had the Townsville Suicide Prevention Network, the Northern Queensland Primary Health Network, all of the key people involved in mental health protection I got them all onto the board. I said, right, we need to start off a process of identifying what would work best in the veteran community. There's a whole lot of communities that have problems. But there's not everything works in the same community. So what we were looking for is what are the things that are unique about being a veteran and a family member of a veteran, and what can we do about that? So so I put my hand up, became a chair, and then we got the board together, which then gave us. Then we put the word out. We said, right, if you're in Townsville and you're interested in saving your mates, let's get together and let's brainstorm this. What have we got to do to do a better job of making sure that we look after ourselves? So we formed these advisory groups, and we had meeting after meeting, dozens of people turning up. Was fantastic. And literally we used the whiteboard. We said, right, if you just got any idea at all, just throw it up. So that some of them were really small ideas and some of them were massive ideas. So yeah, we did that for about 6 months, and then it was an effort to bring all that together. Where some of those fitted in with other ideas, others sort of fit underneath a big idea. So let's bring it all together, and we created 6 campaigns. Okay. We kept it to the military terms. We created 6 campaigns, each of which had a number of activities beneath it, put someone in charge of each of them, and then started to work through what are some of those things that work. And some of the real success stories we've had is, for instance, the Open Arms peer support program that's run today was actually one of the very early programs of Operation Compass. Okay. Which they trialled here in Townsville. They got 2 peers. They put them into Open Arms. It was such a success that they've now rolled it out around Australia. So every Open Arms in Australia has now got peer workers, peer support workers. Amazing. Which is working a treat. So those sorts of things are where I must admit we came up with a few ideas that we found didn't work. They just flopped. And we tested all these on the veteran community. But anyway, what happened to me was about 6 months into it, I realised that we're going to come up with a bunch of recommendations here, but we need to make sure they're implemented. So it was a matter of when we find something works, we've got to identify where's it going to go when the trial finishes. Yep. And one of the main campaigns we had was what we called the Connections campaign. which of course most veterans knew because we'd run these connections, prevention through connection campaigns, which is where the 22 for 22 came from, all that sort of thing. So, but there was no real group we could hand over the connections campaign to. So we noticed that the state government, this housing estate here in Anoomba, was trying to sell this land and an old DPI headquarters building. So we put in a proposal to the Queensland government for the land and the building to create a community centre. With the aim being, and I tried to keep things pretty simple. For me, what is it that's causing our mental health problem? And I found an old quote from a philosopher in the 17th century.
I love quotes, love to hear it.
From a bloke named Immanuel Kant. And the quote is, to be happy, you need three things. You need someone to love, something to do, and something to look forward to.
I've heard this before.
So that's literally what the Oasis was built on. It was, let's get a facility, call it a community centre. I went and visited every community centre in Townsville. Let's create a community centre, which is essentially about connection. So it gives veterans the opportunity to get together and do things they like to do together.
Yep.
So it was really about getting them into a place where they felt safe and they could do things for them, do things with themselves. So we're not actually running any of them. They run it themselves, but it gives them a place and an environment that allows them to do it. And that's literally where the Oasis came from. So Operation Compass then continued for the next 4 years. We created and developed each of the ideas. We worked out whether they worked or not, and then we passed them off to whether it was DVA or Open Arms or some of the ex-service organisations or so on. We just made sure they went somewhere. The one that we needed then the Oasis to transfer across was this Connections campaign, and that's literally what we've been running.
And how's it going?
Well, it's been going really well. We started off, we pretty much started straight away with the mayor was very generous to us and gave us a facility in town where we started running the Oasis, and then we started work on this building, and it took a couple of years to get built.
It's beautiful. It's really beautiful, and all these huts that you can use, and all veterans, if they need to, can use, and
absolutely.
sponsored by businesses, and
that's exactly what it's about. Yeah. So it is literally about the huts and the ability for people to. We have everything going on here now. I think we've got between 15 and 1,800 people a month use the facility. They do everything from podcasting to yoga to wargaming to modelling to singing to pipe bands.
I've been to a couple of the breakfasts.
We have every fortnight. We have a banjo breakfast.
Like I saw one OAR, there probably half the unit was here one time.
We have. And that's the interesting thing. What's developed, because of course the Oasis has developed for us as well. We started off. Literally, Compass was all about ex-serving veterans only, not current serving, because if you're currently serving, Defence has got its own processes for suicide prevention. But when we came to the Oasis, and it was really started to occur mainly when we turned up in this facility, and we've only been here for about just under 2.5 years now.
Yep.
But when we came to this facility, we started saying, as far as we're concerned, a veteran and a veteran's family is anyone who's served or is serving. So we've become much more used to now seeing many more current serving veterans and their families, because of course this is much easier to get into than Laverack Barracks, for example, or REF-based towns.
And I think it's brilliant that the user getting in current serving members, because when they do transition, they're already a part of the community.
Correct.
And it's not so much of a big leap when they feel alone and they've lost their purpose and identity and stuff, and now they've got to have to go forward and like, all right, I've got to go to this veteran community centre to get help. It's a big step for a lot of veterans, so if they're already linked in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Brilliant.
In fact, that's the byline or the tagline for the Oasis. It's transition, connect, integrate.
Yep.
So integration into the community is actually fundamental to the problem. I mean, we've got some fantastic ESOs in Townsville, ex-service organisations, but and all the bigger ones are very, very good. They all help lots of people. But some of the smaller ex-service organisations are more often than not just a group of veterans getting together themselves. So they're not integrating into community. There's nothing wrong with that. That's retaining a connection with people. That's good. That's good. But if you really want to get into the connection space, you've actually got to connect into community. So it's not about doing an activity with just veterans. It's actually connecting into a community where you've got friends and colleagues who are not veterans as well. And establishing that while you're still serving is important. So as you say, having them come to the Oasis whilst they're still serving, come to Banjos on a Friday, for example, sponsored by Townsville RSL, have them come out here and meet lots of others who they might have served with a couple of years ago is gold. Yep. That's really what we're trying to do.
Yeah, awesome. Because I found just since I've left Defence, and then just in my friend group and what the connection is probably one of the big mental health issues, because most people when they discharge go back to their hometown where there might be fuck all veterans there. There might be the only one, and if there is other veterans, they don't know them, they didn't work with them and stuff, and they feel alone and isolated. So the integration connection, I think, is huge and can really help with the veteran mental health issue.
And we have a lot of them coming from Townsville. So in Townsville, there's about 6,000 people leave the ADF every year. About 600 of those leave the ADF from the ADF Transition Centre here in Townsville. And of those, about 200 to 250 of them remain in Townsville every year. So those in particular are the ones we're trying to capture here. But as part of what we've done at the Oasis here is that the federal government and the Department of Veterans Affairs have latched on to the idea of an Oasis. So they're in the process of creating 15 more of these around Australia.
Called the Oasis or their own version?
They're not called the Oasis. They're called whatever they want to call them. And I think...
what is your idea behind that? Because I've spoken to a couple of other veteran organisations that have come up with some brilliant work. They've done amazing for the community. Then the government's come along going, we're going to do the exact same thing, not give you any recognition. And literally just almost buried them down to these veterans, and now like, well, I don't know what's the fucking point, because the government is now stealing all my shit that I've done 10 years of hard work to do. And now you're just coming along, you're not even like, So
absolutely. No, you're absolutely right. But what this needs is it's got to go through a process of maturity. And the first thing is, the easy thing for government to do is, if it's already developing 16 of them, is to follow through on getting them stood up. At the moment, they're only providing capital, so they're not sustaining them, and they're tendering for organisations that can do it, that can be sustainable. But I think that's only the first step. I think in the medium to longer term, there'd be no reason why the Department of Veterans Affairs and, of course, other governments would also, Department of Defence would be interested, and also state governments would be interested in the concept. So what's important here is not just about doing good work. So this is not just another ESO. It's nor are many of the others, some of which are being run by, for instance, Victorian RSL. Or New South Wales and Queensland have got. So even some of the sub-branches of the RSL are doing fantastic work.
I've heard the Queensland sub-branches, RSL sub-branches, are doing fucking amazing. They're pretty much propping up the rest of the RSL.
Queensland RSL certainly is, because of its money. It runs that the lotto.
Because I'm about to ask for a grant. So this podcast equipment it's not doing a good enough job, so I'm about to ask for a grant through the RSL, and I was about to ask through the Victorian RSL, and then Phil Thompson, the federal member of Parliament, was like, Queensland has the money, and so I'm about to go through that process now.
So Queensland has it because it has those the lottery tickets you buy for the houses on the Gold Coast.
Waiting for my $1 million house.
Which lots of us do. So they've actually got, and they're doing some great work. Queensland RSL is doing some outstanding work. The sub-branches and the districts are really dependent on the organisation that's running them, and some of them are doing some excellent work as well, no doubt about that. But then that's absolutely true. But the long-term thing for DVA, I think, is work out who is doing the good work and help them run themselves. So part of a lot of the problem of these organisations is that you've got to raise money. So even sub-branches here don't get a lot of money out of the Queensland RSL unless they need it for a particular thing. Townsville RSL here is still struggling a little bit as a consequence of the floods. So it's not a matter of the river runs gold out of RSL Queensland. There's organisations still running.
RSL, is that open?
Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah.
Because
In
it
fact,
was closed down for a bit there.
it was. Yeah.
The sappers organisation's out there being a sapper.
That's right. NQ Sappers is out.
yeah.
Yeah. Yep. So they run. In fact they had their building and everything fixed up by Townsville RSL.
Okay.
Before the floods.
Okay. Yeah.
And so they'd invested a lot of money in Thurringau to get it up and running again.
Yeah.
And then the floods hit, so they're in a bit of a.
Of course.
And then you have changes of leadership of these organisations, and then things change.
Yep. Yep.
Some of them are younger and they get it, and others are older and they don't get it. So.
Yep.
So there's a big variable across the board in veteran organisations. There's something like that they've done a study.
6,000 ESOs, I've seen.
More than 6,000 ESOs across Australia. Yeah. So I think in the longer term, it's a good start to get if DVA's got 16 of these hubs going. Where they need to take them is to have the other federal government departments that are involved, and that includes the Department of Health, Centrelink, Services Australia, Department of Defence, and then there's even state governments are interested. So state governments, all the state governments have all got their own Veterans Affairs Minister.
Okay.
So their Veterans Affairs would all be interested to know what can they do, and they've got to be led by someone. So what we need is leadership from the Department of Veterans Affairs, and I think they're thinking that in the early days, their leadership will be through the 16 hubs. But eventually, as you say, some of those hubs in some areas are doing the same thing that others have been doing for a long time. Over time, DVA could then identify which organisation is the best organisation for them to sponsor, to help with their operating costs in order to support an ecosystem of other ESOs and other government agencies in an area.
Yeah.
That would be the goal.
Yeah.
Well,
so this is something I've thought about
through.
for a couple of years now. I was like, because I see all these ESOs, and I was like, there should, like, maybe not, but like a governing body that just say all these ESOs, because everyone's asking for money. Every one of them is asking for money, and lots of money. Now, if there's like could be a governing body that was like, all right, we've got $3 million off the government, we're going to split this up. You know, like a step. So it's not the individuals asking for the money, it's how you would be in the military. Like you go through your chain of command and then they divvy out the money. I don't know if that's a good way to do it or not, but it was something I thought of because I see some ESOs getting a fuck ton of money, and then others that are doing just as good work but a lot smaller, and it's just a few veterans doing it are getting none. And then, as I said before, there's a veteran ESO.
You've hit the head right on the head. You've hit the nail right on the head, Joel. The thing is here, it's about what's happening in the local areas. So the problem is with the grant process is everyone writes a grant and it all goes into DVA. In fact, it goes to a Commonwealth agency that does grants before it goes back to DVA. So, but they're making decisions based on how well you can write a grant.
Which if you pay a grant writer, then you're going to get a great grant.
Correct. If you're in the local area here and you know some ESO got a ton of money and didn't deserve it more than the one that didn't get any money. Because DVA doesn't know that. DVA is just working on who wrote the grant. And if you've done a good job of articulating what you need, then DVA goes, this is a good one. And then the one over here, he wrote a shit grant request. Well, they'll go, we're not funding that. Whereas we in the area know, actually they're doing a greater job supporting more veterans and families than the other one is. So it's because there's no regional leadership. We need, and that's where these go back to these 16 hubs. It could be more hubs. I mean, it could be 30. Who knows?
I think the idea of the hubs is brilliant.
So if you had a hub that DVA was responsible for, and potentially, there's another idea, potentially the funding for the grants went through that hub. That hub knows, in Townsville, for example, I know we've got about 20 really good ESOs that serve lots of veteran community. So if we knew which ones were doing the best work, then a central organisation working for DVA, because they're funded by DVA, could actually execute that for them.
I think that's the way to go forward, because even for my grant to get the upgraded podcast equipment so I can actually run this without fucking stress all the time. I'm putting in my grant to a South Queensland sub-branch because I thought Townsville doesn't have any money, so I've got to go to South Queensland, but they don't know who I am or what I'm doing or anything like that. It's like, so if there was a local community leader or a hub or whatever, they could then be like, hey, these guys have asked for 20 grand, but they've only served one veteran this year. We're not going to give them the 20 grand. I think that's a really good way to do it.
So you might be interested in a program. One of those initiatives I was telling you about from Operation Compass. One of the things we ran was a grants program, and we did it deliberately because we realised there's lots of organisations that have got some really, really good ideas, but didn't know how to write a grant. They don't understand how to have a strategy and objectives, and how you achieve your objectives, and then measure your objectives, and then evaluate the whole thing. and then produce a report. Those sorts of things are, in many cases, that's secondary to achieving the goal, right? So we ran a grants program inside Operation Compass. We put out $250,000 every year. We said, right, here's $250,000 for Townsville, and we had some fantastic ideas. But what we found was the ones who had the best ideas didn't know how to write a grant.
Yes.
So what we did is we made the grant process very simple.
Yep.
We said, all you've got to do is have a good idea, write it down in one paragraph and send it to us.
Yep.
If you've attracted our attention, we'll get you in, we'll help you write the grant for
Yep,
our
brilliant.
program. So we sat them down and said, right, so we actually helped them develop their idea,
Yep.
turn it into objectives, understand what it is actually they were trying to achieve rather
brilliant.
than just do a bunch of good things, and then fund them. We gave out 10 lots of $25,000 every year for 3 years, doing a grants program, helping people who are doing the best things with the best money.
Is Oasis doing something similar, or can it?
We don't. We stopped that when Operation Compass
Yep.
finished because that was the funding for Operation Compass.
Yep.
We don't have enough money to do that. But where you and I were talking before, instead
Yep.
of DVA flicking out, they've just flicked out $7.9 million across Australia
Did they?
for well-being and organisations that had things that would improve the well-being
No,
of veterans.
I got in too late. I've been putting off asking for money because I'm like, it didn't want to do that.
Yeah, so they've just done that, and they do this throughout the year. There's a number of different types of grants you can get, everything from commemoration grants to wellbeing grants, and but they're still nationwide. So it's still one organisation sitting in Canberra, working out who gets the money.
Yeah.
Some good guys are getting it, and some who are not so good.
One of the big things I haven't asked for it is like, I'm just a dude who's asking for 10 grand to start a podcast that might not do anything, and then I'm like, no one's going to fucking give it to me, so I'm just going to do it all myself, paid for it. Like, I'm thousands and thousands deep into this.
Yeah.
And then I've realised that the equipment I bought isn't even good enough. Like, this is the second computer,
Right.
and this computer isn't good enough.
Right? Yeah.
But yeah,
But that's what I mean. So you've got an audience, you've got a voice, you've got experience, you've got what many veterans are looking for in someone they trust to find out what it is they need to know. You've got access to the people you need. You can be a voice. You have every right to put in for a grant just as everyone else does.
But I then look at the grant paperwork, like most veterans look at DVA paperwork. I know veterans that haven't even started the DVA process because they look at that paperwork and they're like, I don't even understand the first question.
Yeah.
And they start stressing out.
Yeah. It's all
Now,
bureaucracy, isn't it?
It's fucking like these veterans, me included, we'll run towards fucking enemy fire. We'll die for the country. Like, put paperwork in front of us. you will watch fucking veterans quiver, run away, fucking hide their face. We're like stressing. You'll see sweat.
Yep.
So I can understand. That's why I was interested in that grants program, because I've noticed that in the veteran world, because the military is so regimented in the way we learn, the lessons and everything like that. When it comes to something like paperwork, we haven't been shown how to do the paperwork. Like we get shown everything from how to tie our boots through to how to jump out of a plane, and then all of a sudden is 15 pages of paperwork where the guys, most of the people in defence, they're hands-on guys. They're carrying a weapon, they're like running around with packs on, jumping out of planes, doing all this. That's the shit they love and do.
Yeah.
They're not the computer guys, and then they really struggle. I struggle.
Yeah.
I know veterans that have had 3 overseas trips, blown up, all this, still haven't done DVA paperwork. There was a veteran a friend of mine years ago at 3CR, there was the 3 of us in a really good close friend group. One of them's ended up killing himself. This one here, I hadn't spoken to him in years. I reached out to him for this podcast and this group and stuff, and I was like, hey man, I know you're really struggling with DVA, you suicide, you substance abuse and stuff. He broke down to me. I hadn't spoken to him in 5 years. He broke down to me. I flew him up to Townsville. He was in Sydney. He hasn't done any, like he's struggling.
Yeah.
And then I was like, hey, let's do your DVA paperwork. And we started it then and there, like at my place. I realised that's not where I can help now because he ended up going into psychosis. I got a 14-year-old daughter, really put her in danger without knowing him or whatever. But I see the struggling and the stress just from even a simple piece of paperwork.
Yeah.
And
so that's where the Oasis is excelling, because we know, and all of my people know, that there are so many organisations and programs that are out there that can support veterans, but you'd have to be a Google genius to know where they all are and what they all do, and then go through the process of applying and finding all these things. We've become experts in that.
Yep.
So we get walk-ins here. We get at least at the moment we're getting about 10 walk-ins a week, or filling in our intake form on the website, and then we bring them in. We'll interview them, and we have this what we call the 10 veteran community needs. We'll assess them against all of our 10 veteran community needs, which is everything from mental health, physical health, education and skills, employment, income, support, compensation, transportation, housing, you name it, it's all in there. Mm-hmm. We'll do an assessment, and we'll help them with anything they need, because all of those things are connected.
Yep.
So it's literally, if you just want, and interestingly for us, many of them come in and looking for compensation. That's what they're after. And we'll link them up with a compensation advocate who works with DVA. But interestingly, what happens is they come in and look for compensation advocate. When they walk out an hour later, they realise there's half a dozen other things on our veterans needs table. They go on that wheel of veteran community needs. They go, wow, I need employment as well, but to get that I need education and skills, and I've got a mental health problem which is causing a physical health problem because I'm couch surfing. I haven't got accommodation. And they go, I hadn't even thought of all that. I just wanted compensation because I think money's the first thing I need. So it's about, so one of the things we're doing here is, and that's that something to look forward to. So the something to do is the connections program. The something to look forward to is the come and see of what we call plans and linkages officers, who will link you in with everyone who needs to do, who can do anything to help in any of those 10 areas, or indeed all of them. And then we'll have an employment program, something to do. So all of those things. But imagine if Australia was divided into, at the moment, let's call it 16 hubs for the sake of it. Mm-hmm. Could be more, could be less. Let them work it out in the future. 16 hubs, divide Australia into 16 hubs. Instead of putting out $7.9 million to random organisations all over Australia, centrally assessed by someone in Canberra on what they call a one-off program, which means there's no future understanding of how much you're going to get. Let's just say 16 hubs, $7 million. Let's give each of the hubs $400,000 and tell them, in your area of operations, back to the command and control you pointed to, in your area of operations, you work out where the best spend of $400,000 is.
In your community.
That's almost double what I was doing in Operation Compass. And if we did that once a year, we could actually help Townsville's veterans in the places where they really needed it.
I really believe so. I think that's a really good idea. So is that something you can push forward to?
Well, there's a range of us right now working on it at the moment, including people inside DVA who recognise that these hubs have got some serious potential. The difficult bit is that they need DVA, in order for DVA for them to direct the traffic on these, they need to support them to be operational and not have us, because a large part of our effort is hunting around looking for money for ourselves. So it's to pay our staff, to pay our people, and we've now got 16 employees, for example, who you can't just run out of money and go, oh, sorry, you don't have a job tomorrow. So we're constantly searching for ways to raise money for ourselves in order to do things for veterans. So every veteran community activity is free. We let people use our facility for nothing, so we don't charge for that, because we find if we'd charge for it, well, then there's lots of other places you can do it as well, and they don't feel safe. So we would expect, and this is a number of us working on this, we would say, if DVA were to fund these centres operationally, and it would be a simple formula. For example, let's say we've divided Australia into 16 groups. We've worked out who owns what area across Australia, from the tip of the Cape all the way down to Tasmania and across. Let's say Oasis, my area of operations, would probably be, on the basis of where they are at the moment, would probably be from the Cape to Rocky and out to the Northern Territory border. There's 20,000 veterans in there. Let's call it $100 a veteran. We know where all the veterans are now because we just had a census. So let's call it $100 a veteran. There's $2 million. So if in my area they said, you're going to get $2 million to run your centre, and you're to look after veterans everywhere from the Cape to Rocky out to the Northern Territory border, and every year we're going to give you $250,000 to do grants, you're responsible now for reporting back to us on what grants you gave and what the outcomes were. And we do know the governance side of it. We've got a board, we've got the governance, we've got the staff, not volunteers, we've got staff who can run the show.
Also getting ex-generals and brigadiers and all this who have
used to running
units
this sort of
and
stuff.
Brigades and all this, so they can look after an area of operations that fucking big.
Yeah,
like,
and
just
it
like
can,
overseas. Like
and
how
it can
big's
be
an
anyone.
AO?
It
Like,
doesn't.
yeah.
You don't have to be an officer, or it can be anyone who's got the skills.
Yeah.
And I've got a good mate here in Townsville who was a digger of mine in Pioneers in 1RAR when I was a platoon commander. He's now a very big wig in a very big organisation here in Townsville. He's doing what we would expect an officer to be doing. But and as I said, we had diggers when I was a brigade commander who had PhDs. So it's not actually about your rank. It's about your skill set and your experience. If you've got the right skills and experience, these things, you understand paperwork.
Yep.
So those diggers who don't understand paperwork, who don't want to involve themselves in the paperwork, they've got somewhere to go and get the help they need.
Yep.
And an organisation with paid employees who can devote their time to it and institutionally learn what's going on, can support an entire area and all of the people who are supporting veterans.
Yeah, I think it's brilliant. I think it's something that needs to happen. I'm just like going over thinking in my head now. It looks like
There's a lot of us thinking about it, including, as I said, including people in DVA who've got this. But it's money. It's going to have to be new government money to DVA to support it. DVA is, as you know, is flat out just clearing the backlog right now. They've got their money to run themselves. If you want to run this as well, you need additional.
Yeah.
Probably in the vicinity of $60 million, $100 million every year would cover this, and you would solve a lot of problems that are facing the Royal Commission now.
The question is, where does that money come from? Where in the budget?
The government's got to go, how serious are you about solving the suicide problem?
Yeah.
You can either put band-aids over lots of little things, lots of little recommendations about do this, do that, and you'll solve problems, or you can institutionally solve the problem through a command and control arrangement, through a funding of operational funds, and get the whole veteran community working together, because you've now put someone in charge. There is no one from DVA in Townsville, for example, directing all the other government resources that are available. There's everything from TAFEs, Services Australia, state government, Northern Queensland Primary Health Limited, all of these government agencies. No one's directing the traffic, so they're all got their own programs which don't connect.
That is another huge thing I've noticed in the veteran community. Even just like with DVA itself, trying to find out entitlements and everything, and then DVA differs from state to state, and then there's like, you can spend a day on a computer trying to research shit, and then like, for someone, I'm willing to do that, you know what I mean? Like, I get frustrated and stuff, but there's guys out there, if they look for 5 minutes.
We don't need anyone to be willing to do it. We're happy for them to walk in here, and that's Townsville.
Yep.
We want these available everywhere in Australia.
Yep.
All 16 of these should be able to, or more of them. There's 31 ADF transition centres. There's 16 ADF transition centres around Australia. There's 31 primary health networks. That's the Department of Health has agents in this area and 31 areas around Australia. Mm-hmm. DVA's got none.
So what's your thought on DVA and how... Sorry, a bit of an open-ended question. What problems and challenges do you see with DVA today that are affecting our veterans, and do you know of any solutions, maybe band-aids that we can help with the veterans, and are you linked in with the Royal Commission?
So last question first, I am definitely linked into the Royal Commission. The Operation Compass was literally, me personally, handed that over to the Royal Commission. Mm-hmm. I testified for a half a day to the Royal Commission when it was here in Townsville. We had the Royal Commissioners came to the Oasis and spent a day here, all three of them. So we're well and truly connected into the Royal Commission. The simple answer to your question is all boils down to command and control. We know, Australia knows, and everyone knows that things happen at the local area. So if you've got someone in Canberra sitting in Canberra trying to understand and fund and direct traffic on everything all over Australia, it doesn't work. It will never work. It doesn't. I can't think of an organisation that's national that doesn't have regional representation. So
even down to salesmen.
Primary Health Network's got 31 of them. ADF transition centre. So everyone transitioning out of the ADF can go into an ADF transition centre, and there's 16 of them on bases around Australia. Mm-hmm. They support individuals and the chain of command. They don't all go to Canberra asking for a transition support. They've got local area. Yep. In the regions, you've got primary health networks that their job is to make sure that the medical services available, health and medical services available in an area are appropriate for their region. And I'll guarantee you what's going on in North Queensland is different from what's going on in urban Victoria. So they've got to be regional. They've got to be understood to be regional. They've got to be governed by someone from the central. So I'm suggesting to solve many of these of the good work that's going on in ex-service organisations and by individuals and by all the government programs and not-for-profit programs going on. Tie them together. Bring them into a purpose, and have someone in charge of that in the region answering directly back to DVA potentially. The states would want to be involved. The states, I have the state government. I had the Assistant Minister for Veterans for Queensland was here 2 weeks ago, and state government Queensland wants to know, what can we do to help veterans? What are you suggesting we should do to help veterans? And I'm saying, well, here's my particular perspective. But if I was an organisation that was responsible for an area, funded by DVA to be responsible to DVA, provide KPIs, reports and budgets to DVA, then I would be able to say to him, okay, so here's some of the things your program would dovetail nicely into what else is going on in the area. And if I needed to, I'd go back to DVA and say, this is what state wants to do, how do you think we fit this in? Because we'd all be stitched up. But we've got so many really good programs. We're drowning in a sea of help. With no one who knows how to connect it all up, and no one taking responsibility in the regions to connect it up.
This is the conversation I've had with my veteran friends. I was like, veterans are like the most helped fucking people I know. You know, there's so many organisations and so many everything, but no one seems to be getting help. And then another problem I've seen is the people for them to get help, they have to take that step forward to get help. I think you are needed. So how do we help those guys who are stuck on their couch and aren't making the phone call to Oasis or rocking up?
The thing anyone, particularly in Townsville, so I can talk for Townsville, and I hope when the 16 of these other hubs stand up, they do a similar thing, which they should, because the concept is that the Oasis and each of these other 15 hubs are open to the entire veteran community. That's current serving, ex-serving, and their families. In fact, in Townsville here, we even say, and your friends. You know, I can remember turning up in Townsville here on posting with my family, and the next door neighbour became my wife's best friend. Because when you needed to babysit two kids to take one to hospital, and your husband's on exercise or on operations, you go, well, the next door neighbour's it, right? So the next door neighbour, as far as I'm concerned, part of the veteran community. You get in here, and we've got people who are learning every single day what's available, what programs. We are already advising others about what they should do to adapt their programs. In some areas. So the answer to help anyone is come into the Oasis, check out our website, we'll join you up in a program, we'll find a job for you, and we'll help you with a plan for the next 3 to 5, 10 years.
That's amazing, and that is what's needed. And for those who are struggling to I got out in, just to give a bit of a brief story on me, I did 15 years in the Army. I was a combat engineer, was at 3CR, SOA, 20 EOD. I got out and I got medically discharged because I've had 400 surgeries and mental health and stuff. But then, because I didn't have to work or do anything, I sat on the couch for a year and a half, further and further in depression, suicidal, and everything like that.
Very common, mate.
I didn't seek help at all until I hit rock bottom. But for those listening, you just got to take. I realise us as veterans need to take responsibility for ourselves as well. We can't keep putting off, someone's got to fix this, someone's got to do this, someone's got to do that, we've got to do this. And the first step is, one, acknowledging, but two, taking that step to rock up to a place like Oasis. What's the worst thing that's going to happen? You're going to rock up. There's nothing bad's going to happen.
Well, the point is there's no need for more help. There's lots of help out there. As you've identified, the problem is finding it, the amount of research you've got to do to find, and if it's two different things, from two different programs, makes it even more complicated. The answer is there's no need for more help. It's a need for cooperation and coordination and collaboration. We've got to bring this together, and that's exactly what the hubs do. A hub is intended to be, come into the hub and we'll farm you out to the spokes of the places you need to get what you need. And we'll keep a track of it here for you. And if all you want to do is have a coffee and use the internet or read a book or come and talk to some people where you feel safe, come to the Oasis. It's not all about your PC and your phone, sitting at home wallowing in your own self-pity. Get off your ass, come on in and find out what's available. And if nothing else, just sit around.
Yeah, and you sit around here then rather than sit around. It was
And you'll
really,
meet someone. Well, the number
Yeah.
of people I find
Yeah.
here, they come in here and they go, say, I'm just here for a coffee.
Yeah.
They sit around and they bump into someone they know. Or they overhear someone say, I was in that unit too. Or, oh, shit, you're 10 years older than me.
Yeah.
We had Les Hiddens in here and you probably wouldn't even know who he is. If you've ever heard of the Bush Tucker Man,
Yeah.
well, the Bush Tucker Man
I
lives
mowed
in
his lawn
Townsville.
as a
Snack
kid.
maps, videos.
He used to live out of Woogaroo, and I
There you
used to
go.
mow his lawn as a kid.
He's a Vietnam veteran.
Yeah, I didn't know
He
that.
came in here to one of the banjos
Yep.
and talked. He had an audience of about 20 diggers sitting around fascinated with his snack
Yeah, mate,
maps.
he'd be old now. He was older when I was a kid. He out for 8 years, is it?
Yeah, a bit over 8, yep.
So obviously very well inside of the veteran community and the defence community still. What, if you could say the 3 biggest challenges veterans face, what are they? And then do you have maybe a solution, some advice of how they can work through those challenges after they discharge for their life? So like what I mean is like, for me, mine was, and I think a lot, so when I ask my community, is purpose or self-identity. So when they leave defence, they take the uniform off, they don't know who the fuck they are anymore. That's one. It's a huge one. One is feeling alone. There's like, because you're like in this community, you see veterans daily. What do you think is the 3 big challenges?
That's pretty simple, mate. Transition, connection, integration.
Yeah.
And what you just covered, what you just covered there was transition, was your first one.
Mm-hmm.
Coming out of defence, getting an identity, reshaping yourself, re-identifying who you are.
Mm-hmm.
That's absolutely fun. That's part of transition. If you don't transition properly, you haven't established yourself back in the community you came from before you joined the ADF, whether that's 4 years or whether it's 36, doesn't matter. You've got to find who you are again, and it can be particularly hard.
Yep.
Because of what the ADF gives you. You know, it gives you mateship, camaraderie, it gives you teamwork, it gives you discipline, it gives you loyalty, it gives you all the things, many of the things that you won't find so easily in civilian world.
Yep.
It's all there, just a different form and a different way of getting to it. So that transition is learning about the new piece. The connection is the loneliness piece you mentioned. So connection means you've got to connect. So it's not a matter of having Anzac Days and Remembrance Days where you connect with other veterans.
Yep.
It's actually connecting, doing things that you like doing, that they also like doing. So one of my favourite groups here that uses the Oasis is the modelers. They build models of everything from Chinooks to fighter jets.
Yep.
Some of them use Lego. There's a Lego group here who do the same thing. So but what they do is they have such fun together.
Yep.
In a place. All together, go and get themselves a coffee, do their modelling with bits of glue and Lego, and have a great time. They have little prize award days and all sorts of things, and then they meet regularly.
Yep.
They raise money themselves. They go to Bunnings and have sausage sizzles where they raise money for their Lego, or their modelling, or their glue, or their paint, or their parts, different piece of kit.
Yep.
So that's also an activity where they're working together. So they're all out there cooking sausages and bread, raising money, or they're doing. But that's connecting. That's connecting with people. And those groups, we invite groups to come here, not just veterans groups. So we're happy to have most of the ESOs in Townsville, most of the service organisations all have meetings here.
Yep.
In fact, we give it to them absolutely free.
Yep.
So, in fact, some of them, though, actually will donate money to us. We've had money donated to us by RSL Magnetic Island, and just last week. Last week we had the Nashos give us money. The sponsor, the Banjos, is sponsored by RSL Townsville. So the ESOs all come here and use it for nothing. That's their veterans having veterans meetings.
Yep.
The next best thing, or the next thing on top of that, is veterans joining the community in groups. So this modelling group, or the podcasting, or the wargaming, or the singing, are all groups that have involved civilians as well.
Yep.
So there's the number of clubs out there that would love to have a veteran involved, but until you've got your first veteran, they don't know how to access them. They don't know how do we get a message to the veteran community that we're happy, we'd love to have a few veterans in our group. or there's one veteran there and they want to get more veterans in. Where do they go other than their mates who may not be interested in something? You know, recently we had an activity called archery, which we were working on with the Invictus Games, and it was like, let's do archery. And we've had people here turned up. He was needed connections, discovered he loved archery, and now he's flat out into archery. So there's that connecting. So that transition's the first piece. And that's a bit of a process. Some people do it quickly, some take a long time, but there's a whole bunch of steps involved in that. And that's where coming here just to sit around and feel safe and talk to other people can help. Just talking to someone like you over a banjo on a Friday could actually help you transition.
Yep.
Then coming here to do an activity, or anywhere in Townsville for an activity for that matter. Our website's got activities that are all over Townsville. There's some that are here, some that are all over that are of interest. And then the last piece is integration. So it's feeling as though I belong to another community. I've got my veteran mates, and to be honest, lots of veterans don't want too much to do with the Defence Force for a while.
When I first got out, everything military, got rid of.
Right.
Got rid of it all.
So they're looking for groups that don't have necessarily too many veterans in them, and then eventually they discover, I want to have some of my mates and my old connections. But I've come to the realisation that being my own person with my own new identity, fitting into other people's groups, doing other community activities, is gold. Yep. So for me, the three things are the tagline of the Oasis: transition, connection, integration. All of those three things are fundamental, and that's exactly what the Oasis does.
Can I just have this thought then? Can there be, once these hubs maybe get created or whatever, when people are in that transition process, that last 6 months of their career, they've got their J5 tour or whatever it is, and they're in that process, can we like mandate for them to come to places like this? Because I know a lot of people that wouldn't, just because they don't want to feel helpless. They want to be like, I don't need the help, you know what I mean? So they don't come to places like this. So can we start maybe like, even if it was like the RSL or something, like a mandatory thing as part of the discharge process to start integrating into communities like this, hubs like this. Maybe it's the RSL, maybe you've got to front there once a week and get a fucking roll call and then volunteer for an hour. I don't know how it could be, but sort of forcing that integration, because I know a lot of people that won't integrate.
You have just hit two very key concepts right on the head.
Okay.
The first one is mandatory. So there's too much of this stuff that goes on, in particular inside defence, where it's available on a needs basis.
Yep.
So that means someone's got to decide whether you need it or not, and that comes down to whether you saying it. Yep. We have had soldiers come in here who have needed accommodation, but when they were asked, they said, I don't need accommodation.
Yeah.
Because they were sleeping on a mate's couch.
Yeah.
Well, the answer to that question is, you need accommodation.
Yeah.
So if you make it on a needs basis, then you're relying on people turning up and asking the right question themselves. But to make it mandatory means that whether you think you need it or not, you'll come in. And as I was saying a while ago, people come in here thinking, I need compensation advocacy. That's all I need. We have not had one person yet leave, and that's all I needed.
Yeah.
We've actually, after talking to them for a half an hour to an hour, with two of our planners. They've walked out thinking, my God, you can do a lot more. I need a lot more than that. They don't realise that. So mandatory is your first key concept. You hit that right on the head. Must be mandatory. Now let me tell you the second piece. We're about to commence in February this year. We're about to commence a program called Operation Navigator, and what that is.
Was this Colleen?
Colleen.
Yeah.
Right. So Colleen probably gave you the whole. If you've listened to Colleen's podcast, you've probably got the...
You give us another rundown in case they haven't.
You got the guts.
Subscribe.
So here it is in a nutshell. Every single soldier, sailor and aviator, whether they like it or not, posted to Townsville for their first posting after finishing their recruit and initial employment training, will come to the Oasis within their first 12 months. Beautiful. And we will give them a day of all the things we know they don't know about having a successful career, and planting in their head the things they need to know for when they start thinking about transition. Yep. So instead of waiting to the point where you go, I'm had enough of this.
Where they're disgruntled already.
Right, I hate my platoon sergeant, I'm going.
Yep.
And have left it too late. No education, no training, no preparation, no compensation, haven't done anything really. Well, or didn't know about the opportunities to do court transfers, inter-service transfers, didn't know any of that. We're going to give that to them.
Awesome.
So they'll come here for a day, and that will connect them into several things. The other thing we'll do is at appropriate times during the day, particularly where we can get them where the subject matter suits their family, they can bring their partner. And we want to talk to them about everything from, for instance, Commonwealth superannuation. How do you get access to your super? What about your finances? What about employment? We've got a connections expo. We've got our own connections showcase coming up here, where we've already got about 50, 60 soldiers signed up, soldiers, sailors and aviators signed up to come. And we'll have employers standing around to give soldiers 5 on their business, and then we'll say speed date. Go and talk to them, find out a job, get a job.
Amazing.
The last connections showcase we had, people found jobs.
That's amazing.
So it's literally, the idea here is get people involved and understanding what they need to know early about what their transition could look like.
Yeah.
The next thing we'll be able to do is they'll be able to go to the website and fill in or walk in, do an intake form, and they'll go through that process we talked about before, where they'll sit down with 2 of our planners and linkages coordinators, and talk about what they need for their plan for the 3, 5 and 10 year mark. Could be skills, education, housing, transport, you name it. Mental health. What are we going to do about your mental health? We can look at all of those things.
Yep.
So there's all those things, and then the thing that connects all of those together is an app. So we have an Oasis app, and on that app you can connect to all of those 3 things.
So I don't know if it's you guys. I got an app created this year. I'm 30 grand deep.
Right.
Through Appetizer, and when I was going through Appetizer's like, hey, we just sourced $1.5 million for another veteran app. And I was like, oh. And they were like in Townsville, and I was like, oh, who would that be? Was it Oasis? I don't know. But yeah, so that was one of my plugs, was to help the veteran community. I started fucking investing heavily into an app to try and plug some things. I don't know if I'm going to go through ahead with it now, because it might just sit there and nothing happened to it. I'm 30 grand deep, whatever. It's my money. I don't care. But it was to help. But yeah, so the app. So you have an app? It's coming out, or is it out?
We have an app now. You can get the app now. Beautiful. The link is on the footer of every page on our website. And that has for instance, on the front page of that app is what's called NAV sessions. So those sessions, you can click on it and it'll take you to all of the sessions we've got, from Commonwealth superannuation right through to housing.
Beautiful.
We get Defence Housing comes in here and talks to them about
it sounds
housing.
like I don't need my app, because my app was, one, I was putting together all DVA information. So like anyone, doesn't matter where you're in Australia, you can go through and find what you're entitled to, everything like that. One, it was motivational, inspirational videos and stuff, but 2 was a bunch of videos about, hey, this is how to fill out a DVA paperwork. Fucking, down to explain, demonstrate, all of it. Military jargon was what I was doing, but it sounds like I don't need.
We don't want to replicate what others are doing. We want to connect it all up. So our app is a connector. So it'll link you, for instance, to the ADF Consumer Centre, which gives you everything from budget templates right through to advice on financial advisors. Free. Download on the internet. App's free. It's called the Oasis Townsville app on Apple and Android.
Am I able to get someone in your team to send me the links to everything, all this, so I can put it down
on our website? Go to our website. Have a good look at our website. You'll find a lot of what you're asking now.
Okay, so easy. Including
on the footer of every single page is 2 buttons.
Yep.
An Apple button. Yep. And an Android button.
Yep. Cool.
So if you do it on your phone, go to www.theoasistownsville.org.au on your phone. Hit the Apple or the Android button, and down you go.
Beautiful. I'll also put it in the comments, link in the comments for everyone to just ease for them. But amazing. Well, John, I think you've got to go.
I do. Joel, it's been fantastic. Thanks for coming. It's great to talk to you.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. I think the guys and girls, airmen, seamen and soldiers are going to get a lot out of this. Definitely going to promote Oasis. I think what's happening here is brilliant. I think what you've started in doing, and I think the change that's happening around Australia is brilliant, especially when it comes to veteran mental health, and you're a leader at the front of it, so I thank you for what you're doing. I think it's brilliant. Thank you for your service, your 36 years, and then the 8 years of looking after the veterans since.
Hey, Joel, and thank you
for starting this.
And thank you for what you're doing too, mate, because there is nothing better than having someone who's got that experience that you've got to talk to people like me, and there's thousands of others, people young fellows who have started new businesses, right through to partners of veterans who have got the experience that young wives and mums would love to hear.
Yep.
You're talking to people, giving them an opportunity to listen to those sorts of things, and the questions you can ask because you have got that experience is gold. Well done. Thank you.
Thank you.